Welcome to Feed Your Lion. I'm Dr. Jodelle Yount, and I'm here to aid you in the mastery of total health, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and financial. So prepare to have your wellness tank filled up with this podcast. I have never heard, and I've grown up in church, I've never heard a lecture or sermon quite like this where we walk through the physical part of the crucifixion and what that actually looked like. I feel like a lot of times we're like, yeah, you know, he was beaten and put on a cross, right? But we don't talk about what that actually looked like, okay? So I wanted to write a basic timeline, and if you're note takers, this is kind of the main timeline. What I didn't write is this was around AD 33. So what does that mean for age for Jesus if I say AD 33? 33, right? Because it's after death. So they estimate that Jesus died at about 33 years old. His public ministry was only for about 3 years. So he didn't really start. He was 30 to 33. An actual short time for his public ministry, for all the things that were accomplished in that time. But so this timeline, and we're starting right after. What did he do right before he was arrested? Where was he?
Praying in the garden.
Praying in Garden of Gethsemane, right? Okay, so we're starting here in the early morning hours. You know, while we got Peter, John, James, they're sleeping, right? He's praying. He's not sleeping. That's the first point I want to make, is he didn't sleep at all this night, right? He had his Passover meal, which was the last time he ate, okay, on this earth. And so he was arrested between 4 to 6 a.m. Now, the scriptures vary a little bit. I should actually probably have, let me get you guys, I want you guys, a few different people have this open when we get there. Okay, so we've got first the thing that happens, he gets arrested, okay, early morning hours. He goes first to the Sanhedrin, right, all the powerful Jewish rulers. So this is the Jewish court, okay. Caiaphas and Ananias, those were the rulers at the time. Am I saying that right, Pastor? I'm probably mispronouncing their name. Okay. What?
Caiaphas?
Caiaphas? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So those are the head guy. This is his father-in-law, and then he's the head guy, Caiaphas, right? Okay? So they're going there first. Then what happens? They want him to be crucified. Now, the Jews couldn't kill somebody. They could not execute anybody, right? So he had to go to the Romans for the execution if they were going to approve that, okay? So what happens? After they say, yeah, he's guilty, the next thing is we go over to Pilate, right? And I'll talk about the difference here. Herod was in just Luke only. That wasn't in the other Gospels. But that's still morning. This is like 6 to 8 in the morning. This all happens really fast, you guys, okay? So then, you know, Pilate, no, don't want to do it. Don't want to kill him, but everybody's trying to crucify him, right? So then he says, fine, we're going to do it. So by 8 o'clock, he's already been sentenced in the morning. This is really quick, okay? So at that point, and we're going to go into detail, but he's, you know, flogged, he's getting the crown, he's getting mocked, made fun of. And then by 9 a.m., he's up on that cross, you guys. From 4 in the morning, we've been through Jewish sentencing, Roman sentencing, and already up on the cross after being beaten. It's a very fast timeline, okay? He only lasts up there 6 hours. We'll talk about why. But he is up there, he's dead by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He goes up by 9. Now, just so you know, some of these crucifixions can take days, okay? 6-hour time period, all right? And then by that evening, he's buried. Joseph, remember the guy, he was part of the Sanhedrin. We don't know if he was present, but he was a dissenter, okay? What's the judge, you know, the great dissenter? He was the guy who, he didn't agree. He actually went publicly, took the body and put him in the tomb by that evening, okay? So I wanted to give you an overview of what we're talking about, but let's walk step by step through this, okay? So, I mentioned the sleep thing. What happens to your pain tolerance? He didn't sleep, okay? What happens to your pain tolerance when you're going on no sleep? Anybody know? What does the pain? It's worse.
It increases.
Yes. So you have a significantly lower pain tolerance. Sleep is a natural, like, analgesic, okay?
Yes.
Those pain fibers and things are way more sensitive for people who aren't sleeping well, okay? So, already, right off the bat, he spent the night praying, he's super stressed. Already his pain tolerance is going to be a lot lower. So we already got that going, right? That's just a side note, okay? Now, when did this happen too? That's another thing I didn't tell you. What festival's going on? He celebrated that, right? So that's during the Jewish festival there. Okay. So, did the Romans start crucifixion? Was it a Roman thing? Anybody know?
I don't think so.
It wasn't. We think it was initially the Persians, actually.
Yes.
Okay, around the 6th century BC, they think, that they actually started it. Also, the Macedonians, there's a couple other groups that may have started it, but they think the Persians. But what did the Romans do with crucifixion? They perfected it. Take a guess about how many people you think they crucified over a several hundred-year time frame. How many think the Romans before? And I'll tell you who do you think stopped that? Okay, they think anywhere from 300,000 to up to 2 million people were murdered by the Romans through crucifixion. And they did not do this to their Roman brethren, right? Because this was an agonizing form of death. They did this to the rebellious people, to their slaves, okay? This was not to their high officers and their people, okay? They did this to tons of other people, okay? Now, these are the same group that had the Colosseum and everything else. Lainey and I were kind of talking about this on the way up. We're the same today, right? We still like to watch fights. Look how we crucify each other on social media, right? We're the same people today as they were back then.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just a lot bloodier of a world back then. So think about this when you're complaining about stuff today. You didn't get to be crucified up on anything, right? So, who ended this? Does anybody remember the holy emperor, or the one who was a Christian guy? He was in the 4th century. Constantine, you guys remember him? Constantine, he was the one that kind of stopped that. There was probably a few that happened after that, but those main ones stopped then. So, what were some of these different techniques that we used? Okay, first of all, the Romans had to wait and stand there until these people died on crosses. They couldn't just like leave their posts. They had to wait. So they had several things that they would do to not only make this more brutal, but also to shorten the time period they're going to be up there. Because like I said, if you're just tying them with ropes to a cross, they can last a few days up there. Now, if you're a Roman soldier, you're like, I want to go home, I want to be off the clock. So they had a few things that they did. They did all of these to Jesus pretty much. But let's talk about the first time. I want some of these verses read. What's the first physical insult that Jesus had? It's during this early morning with the Sanhedrin, okay? We've got verses about him being spit on, slapped. He was blindfolded and struck with fists, okay? So those are the first physical insults. So what was the first one I gave you? Let's see. It was Matthew 26, 64 through 68, Matt, I believe.
Jesus said to them, you yourself said it. Nevertheless, I tell you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming onto the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest tore his garments and said, he has blasphemed. What further need do we have of witnesses? Behold, you have now heard the blasphemy. What do you think? They answered and said, he deserves death. Then they spat on his face and beat him with their fists. And others slapped him and said, prophesy to us, O Christ, who is the one who hit you?
Yeah, I'm going to skip the others because they're pretty much recaps of this, and I want to get through everything. So I ain't going to skip, but it's pretty much, a lot of these say the same thing. There are some differences that we'll talk about, like in Luke on this trial, he's the only one that says Pilate sent him over to Herod because he was a Galilean. So in Luke, he talks about that, and then Herod sent him back, right? But the other ones don't say that. So they make little different points, but the overarching theme is the same, okay? But, so, we don't know the extent of these injuries, but has anybody here been hit in the head and hit in the face with a fist?
Yeah.
How many people in here have been hit in the face? Quite a few. How'd that feel?
Very good.
Right? So we're sleep deprived, we've been up all night, stress levels through the roof, so we've got some of these first insults happening. We go over here. Again, now, the first thing, let's talk about the flogging, okay? All right. I ordered this. This is a historical replica of what a Roman flagrum looked like, okay? I'm going to read part of this to you because and I'm going to pass this around. This isn't for actual thing, but it's not that long whip you might see. And think about this. These were Roman soldiers doing this. Now, in the Jewish law, they had a number that they wouldn't allow them to go past. Does anybody know that when they were getting whipped in the Jewish law?
39?
Huh?
39?
It was 40, so they stopped at 39
Yeah.
so they wouldn't sin. That was the whole thing, right? The Romans didn't have that law, okay? There was no upper limit for them. Their point in doing this before a crucifixion was to get them as close to death as they could and then hold it. Because they wanted them bleeding and weak, okay? And the trauma of that because it would shorten their time on the cross. So that was the point of this, okay? They usually had these metal curved pieces on them, as you can see. Okay? These are not like little wussy people whooping. These are Roman soldiers doing this. Okay? These are going to be grown, muscular men doing this whipping. Okay? And there's no limit. Alright? The other thing on there, I brought a replica too of this. This is a sheep knuckle bone. A lot of times they would sharpen these down as well. And they would mix them in with the metal pieces, okay? And they were sharp when they did that. This is an intact one, but still this is a sheep knuckle bone. They also had other uses for these. It was in a lot of their games. They would play dice and things with these, okay? A lot of their paintings depicted that, all right? Also, what did they do back in biblical times to ask for God to give them an answer? Divination type stuff, right? Or they would throw the cast and lot.
Right.
That's what they would use, okay? So there's a couple things they use these for, but interlaced with the metal, they would put these sharpened sheep bones on a lot of these, and they would have these leather straps. So this is you can pass this around. This is an actual like historical replica of what they said this would be like, okay? And think about this. And then we're going to talk real quick about what layers this would go through. And there's a sheep bone too. I want to write this one. All right. All right. Anybody know the first layers of skin?
When I'm choking on food or something.
Epidermis is first. What's the next one right under the epidermis? Somebody said it. Dermis.
Dermis.
Yeah, dermis.
What happens when you get a little lower than that?
You're taking me back to school time.
That's beyond
What's the yellow stuff you see?
Fat.
Fat.
Fat, the subcutaneous fat, right?
Subcutaneous.
Then what are you getting into?
Salt.
Muscle.
Tendon and muscle,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens after that?
Bone.
Bone.
Bone also, organs.
Organ.
Yes.
Yeah.
Think about all these layers, guys. The peritoneum covers this, right? The peritoneal layer. So
Yes.
it covers your organs. Okay, so I'm putting that together. So this thing could rip through to where they're exposing organs. They would hit them that many times. They're hitting them not only shoulders, their back, their legs, okay? They said the skin and the subcutaneous tissues coming out and even their muscles would hang like ribbons from this, okay? You also, especially when you get down into these muscles, lots of bleeding. So you're causing a shock from blood loss, okay?
That's not good.
So this in itself is an easy kill, okay? That's just like one of the first things that they did. All right? So that's the scourging that happened, and that's the Roman flagrum is what we call that. They would either tie them to a one column where their hands were around it, or two, either way, spread out like that, and they would stand pretty close to them.
There's more, probably, maybe, but I was trying to get him to send me down that package.
All right.
John Stewart,
He's a thief like that.
I need extra teeth.
And also, guys, I forgot to say, usually it was two soldiers, not one. So if one got tired of hitting somebody, they'd have a second one to tag him. So, we're very, very, very brutal. Okay? So what's next? What did they do to Jesus after he got his flogging? He wasn't done yet before the cross. What did they do next? Crown of thorns. I'm going to pass around a couple sheets. This is a picture, and I apologize they're not in color. Our color ran out on the printer right before I did this. I put the name, and I'm not a botanist, but Xiphus spina Christi is the name of the tree they think that they took these thorns from, 1.5 to 2 inches thick, okay? I've got, this actually came from Jerusalem, okay? I ordered it. They actually have Catholic monks who live up there to harvest these and to intertwine these, okay? So they believe this is kind of from the same one or two. There's a couple different trees like that or shrubs that they think they came from, but this could be actually the exact same. It's from Jerusalem and from one of their shrubs, so you can kind of get a look. But what I want to demonstrate first is, Matt, I'm going to lay this really gently on you. Did they just lay it on there?
No. They beat it on.
They took their reeds or their rods and they struck repeatedly over and over and over and over again. Has anybody seen a scalp wound in here?
Mm-hmm.
What happens with scalp wounds?
They bleed real bad.
They
They
bleed
bleed
like
really bad.
stink.
Yeah.
Okay? They don't stop bleeding. So he's already been flogged to the point of near death with all of these things exposed. He's been beaten to the point through his muscles, maybe organs showing. He's already been spit on, slapped, and struck with fists before that. Now, not only are they hitting him with a sharp object, driving those into his scalp, they're also having him stand with his purple robe and they're mocking him and they're bowing before him, right? So there's an emotional torment to this too. The Romans weren't only great at the physical torment, but they emotionally tormented him and mocked him too. Okay? So that's why I brought this, because he was standing there. I want you to picture that, okay? I want you to get a picture of that in your head. I didn't bring a purple robe, but he's got this in his hand. He's got this. He's in pain, he's bleeding profusely, and he's got a purple robe on, okay? That's what that looked like, and this is all before we even get to the cross. All right, we get to the cross now, right? So here we are, we're getting close to 9 o'clock. How much did an actual cross weigh, a Roman cross typically? 300, Matt,
About, yeah.
I'm impressed.
Actually, 397. No.
It's roughly about 300 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, I want to talk for just a second. There was a few different cross types. It wasn't just the one we typically see. So let me give you a little picture. I tried to draw it, but it's a little lower. Here's the main ones. Okay? You could have a single beam. Okay? You could have this taller T shape. You could have the Latin cross, which we typically think of Jesus on, where there's a little bit exposed at the top, okay? You could have an X shape, or I just put this one in here. Which apostle was crucified upside down? Peter, right? He didn't want to die like his Lord did. So there's several different types. Traditionally, we think Jesus was on this smaller T-shaped type cross, or the Latin cross, okay?
So is there any proof of that? Because you said we think that he was.
Well, there's a lot of stuff we don't know exactly. Scripture isn't like super clear on, they're clear on the basic storyline, but not on like some of the details. But this is what most historians believe. So again, Latin cross, this tall one is the St. Anthony's cross, okay? And a St. Andrew's cross. And then in Latin, I'm just going to read these to you. The tall T shape, they call that a crucis camisa, or the St. Anthony's cross, and or a tau cross, which is the Greek letter T-A-U. It looks like that, okay? And then the crucis emisia, which is our Latin cross, is the one we think that Jesus was traditionally crucified on, okay? I had to read those because I can't remember. But they did not have a person who was beaten half to death and done all this. They couldn't carry a 300-pound cross. Does anybody know how long the walk was up to Golgotha? Well, first of all, what does Golgotha mean? The place of the skull. Okay. The place of the skull, okay? Does anybody know how far that walk was? Only about 600 meters, just under about half a mile. But again, think about this. He hasn't ate or drank anything. He's lost all this blood. He can barely stand up, okay? A typical cross, like we just said, 300 pounds. So they didn't have them do that. They typically had them carry in a cross like this or like this, just the horizontal piece, okay? Does anybody know how much that is? Called a patabulum. Does anybody know how much that weighs? Anywhere from about 90 to 125 pounds. Guess what I brought in? This is 110 pounds. Is there anybody in here? I just want you, if you can physically take it, I want somebody to put this on their back if they think they can take it. Now again, this is a healthy human being. This was just under half a mile walk. Okay, he wasn't healthy when this happened. But I want to give you guys a visual. I want somebody who can take it. All right. I tell you what, Lainey and Jocelyn, come here and put this on my back.
No, me or his railroad ties.
I want you guys to understand what this would have looked like and what would have been happening. So he's got this after he's half dead on him. Now I want everybody in this room yelling, "Crucify, crucify." Everybody yell it like you mean it. Mean it. What happened?
Crucify.
What happens to him? He gets weaker. He can't do this. Come here, guys. I don't want to throw this on the floor. Well, yeah. What happened with Jesus? Who carried it?
She's getting to that.
Who carried it?
Jesus.
No, Jesus didn't carry it. Who carried his cross?
Somebody.
Oh, it's cross.
Simon.
Yeah.
Simon of Cyrene. Remember that? He's a bystander, right? We don't know why he was there. Jesus falls to the ground. He can't do that. He's half dead. Okay? Now we get up there. We got Simon carrying the cross. We got Jesus being limped along. They could tie these people with ropes, right? They do that. They did that too. But let's talk about the nails they used, and let's talk about where they went. We don't know if there were 3 or 4 of these historically, okay? But what we do know is where the common sites were because they've had limited archaeological evidence about this, okay? For the wrist. I need my foot model to get ready. Okay, take your shoe and sock off there. Where did these nails go in the upper body?
The hand. Right here. Right
No. No.
Oh, the wrist.
Wrist.
That's right. That's right.
If we tried to do the hands,
Right.
it wouldn't hold.
Right. The wrist.
Where did they go?
Right there.
About right here in between the radius
Yes.
and ulna. Does
Yes.
anybody know what nerve went there? Medial nerve. One of the biggest in the upper body. This was expected to be one of the most painful things they could have. They would have burning and shocking pain. It would destroy that nerve. But guess what it didn't do with these nails? Because what could Jesus not have done per the scriptures and the prophecy? No broken
Yes.
bones. So this would destroy that nerve, causing immense, terrible pain. But there was no broken bones that went between the radius and ulna. Okay? Now, another thing that happened from the weight of the arms, what happened? Read Psalm 22, 14, and 15, somebody. There's one thing I didn't mention that I need to go back to. When Jesus was done being flogged and things, he was offered in one of the Gospels, I think it was Matthew, it was gall, and in the other, I think it was Mark, it was myrrh. What was the point of that? Those were natural, like, opioid pain relievers back in the day. He didn't take it. That was after he had been almost beaten to death. I forgot to mention that. It talks about that, and that was a prophecy. But my point of asking you that to read that, Matt, all my bones are out of joint. What does that mean? What happens when you're hanging like this and you got weight on you? Dislocates.
Yes.
Didn't break,
Doesn't break, dislocate.
but dislocates.
Mhm.
That follows on down to the elbow and shoulder too, just so you know. So not only do you have this nerve being completely destroyed and like the worst pain ever, you also get dislocation on top of that. Now there were a few ways on the side, like this is your cross, okay? Now there's a few ways that they say that you could have nailed somebody to a cross on the feet. Again, there's limited archaeological evidence, and even though there were so many crucifixions, why is that? They took the nails out. They made them easy. They made them double-headed so they could take them out, okay? So we only have a couple of these things actually from live to see where they did this, okay? But what they would do, I'm going to move your leg, okay? Just use me. Right through the heel bone, right here, on either side. Can everybody see that? So they would go through that calcaneus, that big bone in the back, on either side of the cross. That was a common way. Another one was they could put them on the front and kind of flex your foot forward like that. Perfect. They could go through the second or third metatarsal about right here. Now again, another big nerve, dorsal medialis, runs right through there. Again, same thing. Tremendous nerve pain. And what did they have to do to breathe?
Raise up.
They had to raise up on those feet that have been nailed like that. There's a third way, but they say those are the two most common. They could flex both of those legs up together at about 45 degrees on the knees and then make the feet go down and go through both with one nail. But they think it was more likely 4 nails, okay? You're talking 7 inches, okay? 7 inches thick on the feet and about 5 to 7 on the wrist. And by the way, when they referred to hands back then, they were including the wrist. So that's just another thing for you to know. So that is how, does everybody understand that? What was hung on the cross with him?
The sign that said
What does that sign say before I write it?
INRI. The King.
INRI. What does INRI mean?
Here's the King of the.
I'm going to write this for you guys.
I think it's Latin word.
I got the Latin on here, but you can understand what the Latin says if you look at it. Because I'll butcher the Latin, but look, the first word looks pretty close to Jesus, doesn't it? And what's the second word look like up there?
Nazareth.
Jesus of Nazareth, right? And then, does anybody know what Rex is in Latin?
King.
King. And finally, here's our word for Jews in Latin. Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Okay? So, you know that some of the higher ups in the Jewish, they didn't like that. But Pilate said that sign stays. That's documented in Scripture, right? They didn't like that he put that sign up there, but he said it's staying. I want to talk about not only the physical torture for a minute. We're going to talk about how people died on the cross, but for a minute, I want to talk about the mental and emotional and the spiritual. Okay? So somebody read Matthew 27:39 through 44. And somebody else get Mark 15:33 through 34 ready. So I want to point this out really quick. In Matthew and Mark, they say both criminals marked him. Luke is the only one that talks about the one thief who, he tells them, I'll see you in the promised land with me. Luke's the only one. The first two say that they were both insulting him. So that's just one of the differences. There's a few things like that. Most of it is to convey different points, they think, not like necessarily trying to tell a different story, but conveying different theological points.
So they were really close enough to hear the conversation that they were having up on the cross.
I mean, there was a lot of, think about all the women right there at there's a lot of women right there with him that it says, and you got the point where he talks to John and says, this is your mother now, right? I mean, so there's things that are happening during that time. I'm focusing more on the physical tonight, but there's a lot of other things that were going on. But I wanted to point out that it's not just physical torment, right? He's got everybody, while he's going through the worst pain of his entire life, going by and mocking him and insulting him. You think about that. Think if you were in that kind of agony. We couldn't even imagine that. We're so cush in society today. We couldn't even imagine anything close to this, the brutality of this. But you also have on top of that the mental and emotional anguish. Now, what's worse than any of it? What was he crying about in the garden before all of this? What was the worst more than any physical, emotional, any of that? What was the worst thing that happened during this time?
God turned his back on him.
God. He had a separation from God. Why did he have that separation? He was perfect. Why did Jesus experience that spiritual separation? Because we can only be spiritually separated because of what? Sin. What was the point of the cross? He took on the sins of all of us. Therefore, he could not be in concert with God when he did that.
Yeah.
That was worse than any of this other crap we're talking about. Read the Mark one, whoever has that.
At noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. And at 3 p.m, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?
That's what he wanted the cup. Sure, he didn't want to go through any of this torment, but he didn't want that separation from his Father. That was the worst of all of this. So I want you to think about that. We talk about mind, body, soul, spirit. Jesus did all of that in the worst possible way. All right, one more part here. How's he actually dying? There's a few mechanisms of death, but how are a lot of people dying on a cross? Remember, they did this a lot.
The sword inside.
Suffocation.
Yes.
Asphyxiation.
Yes.
Why? What happens? When you're stretched out like this and your weight is down on you, you can't exhale well. They had to push up on those nailed feet because they needed to breathe out. Okay? When they're hanging like that and your arms are out like that, your ribs can't expand the way they need to. There's all this weight. So what's happening? You're taking in a lot of oxygen, which is converting to CO2. You can't breathe out the CO2. Okay? So you're going into respiratory failure. Okay? It's causing stress on your heart and your lungs. Your heart's beating faster to try to use that oxygen up. There's this cascade of events, and I don't want to go into deep physiology with you, but basically you're getting cardiac and respiratory failure. You're getting fluid around the heart. You're getting fluid in the lungs, okay? So for these people that lasted for several days, usually it's an asphyxiation because you're so exhausted. Now you think about this. You've got these muscles that are so fatigued, right? They spasm to the point they're not working. Their arms aren't working at some point, okay? They're having to exhaust themselves by pushing up to get that breath out. How long are you going to last? That's the question for that. But we compound it because of what I said earlier. What are they doing beforehand?
Beating them close to death.
They're beating them half to death. So they've got blood loss and hypovolemia and dehydration and all these other things. So a lot of the shock and things are causes of death as well. This was a terrible way to die. I can't think of much worse than this, honestly. Jesus likely only lasted this long because he had lost so much blood and the shock and the trauma to his system of that. Likely it wasn't necessarily the asphyxiation. Now, remember I told you they came up with ways to speed things up, right? What was one of the things the Roman soldiers did to speed this process up?
Break their legs.
Break their legs. What did I just say? They have to push up to breathe. Can you do that with 2 broken legs?
No.
No.
No. But we said, so that would speed it up. They asphyxiated and died. But we said Jesus had no broken bones, right? Why? He died before the other people did, right? And that was the prophecy, right? They prophesied that, no broken bones. Now, I'm going to pass this picture around. I did not order the spear, the replica spear, but I wanted to let you know this is like what they think the tip of it looked like. So I'm passing that around that they actually stabbed his side with. So I'm going to pass that around so you can see it. But I brought one of my spears. I got this in Kenya, so I brought that. Now, a lot of your traditional photos where they're showing the spear to the side, they're showing it on this side. Likely, historians and a lot of medical people think it was the other side because the point of this was to pierce the heart. He was checking to see if he was dead, right? If you're on this side of the body, the heart is on the other side, right?
Yeah.
If we're standing on the right. So you'd have to go kind of far, plus you're using like a non-dominant hand typically, unless they were left-handed. Most people are right? So a lot of historians and medical people think, despite the pictures, that it was probably this side because they're closer and it's using more of your, like a typical how you would hold it. But the point is, what came out when they stabbed him? Blood and water.
Blood and water.
Now this is kind of interesting. Why is this interesting? Why did he have blood and water first? Let's talk about from a medical point. I just told you they're stabbing him in the heart. I told you that shock and trauma cause the heart and the respiratory systems to fail. You can get what's called a pericardial effusion. There's a little thing covering around the heart. And when you have that kind of trauma and shock, it expands with fluid, okay? When it gets too hard, because that only gets so much give, it's called a tamponade, and it actually compresses the heart, and it can cause death too. So that would be one of the causes of death from this. So when they did that effusion came out, so that was that blood and water. So from a medical standpoint, that's what you're seeing. But what's significant about this is they combine this as like the Eucharist and the baptism. What do we do? What do we do once a month here? Communion, right? The bread, the juice, right? It's supposed to be the blood.
I was getting ready to say communion.
What do we do when you're saved? And you want to take that a step, you want to commit, what is that? What do we do? Baptize with water. So they think that's significant. Also, the first sin, who committed that? Adam. Eve was created through what?
His rib.
From the side,
Inside.
right?
Yes.
First sin, Jesus taking all the sins. That's the final act there. Right? So there's a couple like significant things to that as well. And then, of course, we've got and like I said, there's other things, but he was dead by 3 p.m. when they checked him, okay? And they broke the other thief's legs, it says. John is, by the way, the only one who talks about that. See, these are these subtle differences between the four, but John is the one who actually talks about that. I think that's really about all I wanted to tell you, and we're getting close to the end. Do people have any questions? Like, I want to say this before I ask that. I think a lot of times we get into this robotic thing with communion, and with, it's just a part of what we do. I don't think we actually think about the level of sacrifice. I can't even imagine one little piece of this, let alone everything that happened to him in that time. And I think sometimes we forget the seriousness of what the sin means, what the weight of that really is. And I wanted tonight to provide you with a little bit of a picture, so when you're taking your communion, or we're talking about these things on Easter, this was a serious, heavy topic. You guys can feel that tonight, right? I mean, just kind of looking at some of these things. And I wanted you to have a little better picture of what that actually looked like. But I didn't go through every little thing, but I think we did a good overview. What questions do you have? Anything?